All right, welcome to the Moniac podcast. Today we've got a special guest. We've got Ben Seymour here, a longtime friend of mine from way back in film school in the college days, as well as a former colleague at Rhythm and Hughes. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah, so you are currently the co-owner and executive producer of Postmodern.
That's right.
And so can you tell us a little bit about what it is you do?
Yeah. So as the executive producer, my role is a combination of some creative direction, business development, business operations, and then just producing, project management. That's kind of how I divide most of my day, is some percentage of those four things. And then as the co-owner, obviously it's just, making sure everybody's happy and that the lights are on and, nobody's parking in our parking lot that's not supposed to, those kinds of things.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Nice. So why don't you give us a little rundown of exactly what your company does?
Yeah. So we're a production company. It's a almost 31-year-old company. So I came on 10 years ago as the executive producer. And then my wife and I bought the business a little over 5 years ago. So traditionally a post-production company. In fact, the company's so old that back when it was first started, it was the only, we're in Denver, Colorado. It was the only post house that had both nonlinear editing and sound recording and mixing in one facility. Those two things were typically separate spaces, particularly in this region. So the founder of the company, a guy named David Emmerich, was smart enough. He was an editor, was smart enough to kind of say, well, what if I put both things in one place? So our history is post-production only until about around the time I came on. So a little over 10 years ago now, 11 years ago, we switched to say, why don't we start doing production as well? So now here we are, fast forward to the present day, we are a full spectrum production company. So we do everything from, pretty large scale commercials and brand videos, full production, 35
so shooting and
35 to 75 people crews, to animation, motion graphics. And then we also do a lot of all of our staff and all of our in-house capabilities are all post. So right now I'm speaking to you from our VO recording booth. On the other side of the wall is an audio engineer and audio suite. Right over here is another audio suite. And then we've got 3 edit bays and a color correction bay as well. So all of that capability is in-house. So there's still a lot of stuff that we do that's post only, just post.
Right. So post is all in-house. And do you have on location shooting as well, or that's all, or sorry, in-house shooting, or is it all on location?
It's almost all on location. So we have sort of like a roster of freelancers in town and in the region that we hire. So for directors, DPs, copywriters, all the way down to, obviously like PAs and craft services, all that stuff we crew up based on the project and based on the talent that we know, like in the area. But we shoot,
very cool.
Yeah. So we shoot in Denver, we shoot in Colorado, but we also shoot all over the country.
Awesome.
I haven't done an international shoot yet, but
next on the list.
Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
So you moved down there, I want to say it was like 2009, was it?
So 2008. It
was 2008.
2008. Yeah, we left LA.
Okay. And so you didn't go there immediately. So you had done other things before.
Yeah. We left LA in 2008 with the intention of moving to Denver, Colorado and getting out of the business. And I was going to do something else, and my wife was going to do something else. We weren't sure what we were going to do. We were going to do something else. The economy was terrible. That was the real estate bust.
The crux of it. Yeah.
Yep. And so things collapsed right when we moved here, and one thing led to another, and we limped through different jobs. And shockingly, Denver in 2008, applying for jobs with all of this, producer titles on your resume, everyone's like, "What the hell is that?"
Yeah.
I have
no idea.
Yeah. What do you mean? There I was, like in LA, like working on multi-million-dollar budgets and working on projects like The Sopranos, and I was like, "Cool, what can you do this thing?" But one thing led to another, and I started working as a post supervisor for actually a pretty big company that does a bunch of reality television stuff and home remodel shows and stuff out here. And so one thing led to another as a post soup there for a couple of years. And then I eventually came to Postmodern and came on as a producer and then executive producer. And here we are.
Gotcha. And so my big question is, to tie it into most of the audience here is from visual effects, animation, and gaming. And you left the visual effects industry because you were in visual effects with me.
Yeah.
And what was it? Because I can't remember back then. I mean, I remember we all knew that there was razor thin margins, and this probably isn't the greatest business model back then. Was that the impetus, or you were just kind of sick of LA and sick of and just wanted to kind of get out of the industry, or was it more visual effects based because you were part of that, or what was it?
It wasn't LA. It was the business. It was the idea that, which I think is unfortunately probably a lot of the same things that plague that part of the industry, visual effects, that is ridiculously long hours. You know, it was the idea that if we were going to plant roots, or we wanted to, you know, I mean, this is different for everybody depending on what your life situation is. But if you want to be in a place where you can have work-life balance, I mean, that is not a term that existed then, particularly for visual effects. And probably still doesn't in a lot of ways, unfortunately, in that part of the industry. So, but I think we knew, just looking at down the road, we're like, well, wait a minute, if we want to do these other things, have kids, or, you know, just not have these insane hours, and be literally physically healthy, right? This isn't sustainable. We can't keep doing this. And so that was the big impetus. It was like, I remember,
to reinvent yourself in a way.
Yeah. I mean, anecdotally, I just remember, and I know you've been there, everybody else has to some degree. It was like, we were working on one long render for a feature film, which will remain nameless at the time, for the opening shot of this feature film. And it had to get done. And I walked down, we were office, you know, where I was at a VFX house in Santa Monica, and I had to went down to REI, bought a sleeping bag, came back so I could sleep in the studio for the next 2 days. I was like, this
sucks.
I'm not making enough money, finding enough enjoyment to do this. Continue to do this, you know.
Of course, salaried, so you're not getting anything extra either. There's no bonus in visual effects.
Bonus. And it was just, and you know, my wife was doing the same thing. So when Trista came, I mean, I remember that time she had to like bring me fresh clothes, and it could have been, you know, if I had I recovered from that 2 weeks later, she could have been doing the same thing. She'd have been sleeping. She was like, this is not.
I've been at places where one of the benefit proposals was to have like a cleaner on house that came in to wash people's clothes because they're spending the night in the studio. I'm like, this is insane.
What?
Yeah.
I mean,
you know, we had no idea what we were getting into.
I mean, I look back fondly to all the things.
Oh yeah.
You know, but
then you're in the trenches with people, and you know, that part, you gain this huge camaraderie, but at what cost? All that kind of stuff. And I think that's what people are going through now, you know, with so many layoffs, content drying up and stuff like that. People are kind of questioning those things again. And then they question them when the pandemic hit as well, with the whole work from home. And it's like, oh, I've got a work-life balance. Now I don't have to sleep on the floor of the studio anymore. I can work my ass off at home, and that's much better because now I can kind of do other things. So, and the crazy thing is then it made you work even more because you're here all the time. Yeah. Interesting. Well, because this is about movies and money, the interesting thing that you just brought up a little bit ago is that you and your wife purchased this business 5 years ago, I think you said.
A little over 5 years ago.
So what was the strategy there? Did it just come up out of nowhere? The owner wanted to sell, or was it like a lawyer thing where you became a partner and then something happened there? How did this work?
Yeah, no, good question. The latter part of that. No, like I said, I had worked for the company for, I don't know, it doesn't matter now. I guess a little over 5 years, 6 years at that point, and I was the executive producer. So I was working very closely with the owner, and who was also the founder. And he's a wonderful guy, continues to be a mentor, and is great. But it got to the point where I realized it was more, you know, was more control and creative control in a lot of ways. It was like, well, if I'm going to keep doing this, I want to kind of do it my way.
Mm-hmm.
And he was ready to not do it anymore. He wanted to, I think, not that we're dedicating this to small business ownership, but I do think there gets a point, particularly when you're someone that's creative, and then you go into the business side of things and running the business, unfortunately, you're taken away from why you started this in the first place, which is the creative expression of it in some respect, right?
Totally.
So I think he had gotten over, 25, 30 years, he got to the point where I went, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to run the business. And I want to go back and be an editor. I want to just be creative. So that was a good change because I wanted to do more of the business ownership part, have more creative control, have more, be able to execute on what I thought the vision for the company could be. Right. And so that's what led us to that. So there's no partnership. It was a straight, we bought the goodwill, purchase. We bought the company. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah. And how did you go about doing that? Did you have a bunch of money saved, or did you take out a loan, or was there owner financing? Because I know that exists too. Yep. The reason I'm asking this is because I'm currently watching somebody called Corey Sanchez, I think is her name, and she's talking about how you can buy businesses and that are already existent, because there's, especially with the demographic now of all these baby boomers who just want to retire or whatever it is, there's a lot of really good businesses that they just, people want to walk away from and, retire or whatever it is. There's lots of situations, or your guy's a perfect situation. I just want to go back and be creative. And so it kind of opens up these possibilities for you to think about, oh, what if I just buy businesses and I can add some value to it and go that route. And so that's why I'm very interested in this, because I think I've studied a whole bunch of things as far as bringing in money. And I think your own business is a huge part of it because of the control piece that you mentioned. Yeah. But additionally, it's just another diversification of an asset that you have that can bring in money.
That's right.
And so a lot of people think that this kind of stuff is out of your reach because I just don't have money for that. So that's why I'm curious, because I've heard you can get owner financing or obviously a loan from the bank or whatever it is. Maybe you just worked a bunch and saved up a ton of money. So I'm just curious what your situation was.
Yeah, I mean, and we explored all those scenarios. So it was owner finance. It took us a long time. It took us about a year to get to a point when we had the terms laid out that we felt comfortable with. And none of it was, fortunately for us, it was all amicable. There wasn't like, well, here's a sticking point. It was more just like, how are we going to do this in such a way that works, because it was partially owner financed. And yes, we had money saved. We had money saved that we were able to put a big chunk down. But in that owner finance scenario, it's got to work for both the buyer and the seller, right? Because him getting paid for the duration of that loan is totally contingent on the health of the business. The business has to stay healthy. So he or she is not involved. They don't want to be involved in day-to-day operations, but they want to trust and know that you are actually running the business in such a way that you can be profitable enough to pay them.
Yeah.
Right. Make your payments.
Right. Not run it into the ground. That's a
not
really
run it into the ground. And
so thought of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I always, in our situation, it was very clean, kind of what the line was. And it was, like I said, that worked really well. But I think that can be tricky for other owners, buyers and sellers, where it's like, hey, we're buying it and you need to be hands off. But at the same time, the seller's kind of saying, well, I'm trying to be hands off.
Make sure I get my money.
Yeah. So, and when there's more assets involved, there can be more, there could be more structural involvement, if you will. In our case, it wasn't that way. It was just make the money. And like I said, I've been extremely fortunate, like no question about it, that we've had such a great relationship, because he's kept on as a mentor. So I could say to him, without saying like, hey, we're really spending a lot on this. I could say, what kind of things did you face when you were in this position? Right. And he can give me advice, knowing that ultimately it also means that it's helping him get his payment.
Right.
And
So situation.
Yeah. So
cool.
I'm extremely lucky. We're extremely lucky. And I know that's maybe an exception. I hope it's not. But to answer your question, yeah, we saved the money. so we could give him a good chunk up front, and then any owner financed it, and we paid it off. We paid it off in last January on schedule, which was huge. It was great. And
Awesome.
yeah,
So
that's nice.
does he work for you then?
He doesn't,
the
but
editor that, yeah.
he is in the same building. So he edits
cool.
on the hall, and occasionally we work together. Like we're working on a documentary
Same
together
project.
right
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really cool story. Yeah, because I've heard a whole bunch of things, and you mentioned the financing piece. I think that works even with banks, where they've got to make sure that if it's a business or a like a commercial property, they don't do this with a real estate, like a residential real estate. You just ask for a loan and then you just got to make your payments. But for commercial real estate, it's more like a business. They want to see who the tenants are, what their revenue is, make sure that they're going to get paid, that they're not just going to throw all this money out and then the money doesn't come in. So that's a really interesting piece. I want to move over to I saw an article that you wrote on your website. I went on your website and was perusing around. And yeah. And I saw an article that you wrote that, really hit me, because I've been doing these YouTube videos recently, and it was my son's idea. I've been doing all these like explainer videos that I thought were very valuable and important. And I'm like, nobody is watching these things. Like nobody gives a shit about money. but the truth is it was boring. And even though I'm paying my son to edit these videos, he was getting bored of editing these things. And so he came up with this idea for me to do these skits, but where I change the words of these famous
they're great
movies and give a message in that. So it's that entertainment. I don't know if you don't have to recite it verbatim, but can you give the essence of what that is? You call it the 3 E's. And because I think that really struck me. I'm like, that's a really good point that I hadn't thought of, but that's why this is actually working better than my, talking head videos, essentially.
Yeah. I think, I love alliteration and I love acronyms. So I came up with the 3 E's. There was a third one that was kind of hard to figure it out. I was like, I think this is it. But yeah, it's
one more E.
I was like, what is that other E? It's it's the sort of the trifecta of entertainment, education, and engagement. And because the first two, entertainment and education, can be such that the viewer watches it, whatever it is, commercial on, the Roku, or a trailer in a movie theater, or whatever the viewing is, they walk away and that's great. That's all there is. But how much do you need to tie in engagement where they actually take action, that you're going to do something, right? And so particularly for our business, because we do a lot of commercials, there has to be some sort of engagement. There has to be a call to action. There has to be something there. So it's always a balance of depending on the audience, depending on what the KPIs are for whatever this individual video or the series or whatever it is, whatever you're looking to get out of it, you got to find that balance between education, entertainment, and then engagement. And for you, like I think what you're doing, what you and your son are doing, is like a perfect example of sort of the marriage of all of that. It's like, it's fun, it's entertaining, it is educating, and then you're leaving just enough for people to go, okay, now I want to find out more. I'm going to take some engagement to find out more about that. So that idea is like, in my opinion, the most perfect content, video content, if you will, with respect to some businesses, I suppose, hits all three of those perfectly. It's typically like any other rule of thirds for other things. It's like, it's usually, one or two take shape more than this last piece does. And so that's always kind of a balance. But yeah, I think if the intent of that article, I guess, of the idea is that you don't have to know exactly what the percentage you're going to weight to every piece of content you're going to produce might be, but you need to go into the process being aware of those three things first and foremost. Because oftentimes you get into doing an explainer video the intention of your explainer video is to educate and get people to take action, to engage, but you didn't think about that it's not entertaining.
It's not
Right.
fun.
So it's
Yeah.
like, and this is not a criticism of you. This happens to everybody.
Yeah.
We just go, fuck it, I'm going to make it. And you go headlong into it without going like, wait a minute.
Right.
Where are my percentages here? Because I need to get a certain thing out of this, or I want the audience. Maybe it's more education than the other two. I want the audience to get something out of this, which is that they leave educated about something.
Right.
So anyway, that was the idea behind that.
It's brilliant because I was actually like, man, I got to include this because I plan to someday. So I've done my 3-act structure, rule of threes again. There you go. Yep. For my courses that I do, but business is the very last thing. And it's kind of generic right now because it's like why a business is good and all this kind of stuff and what you could do. But ultimately, I want to turn that piece into its own masterclass because I think it's a huge thing to learn about. And to me, I'm like, this is brilliant because I think this is key. Mark, you could have the best product in the world and no one's coming if you don't have really good marketing.
Absolutely.
And what you laid out, I think, is perfect. I love the example too with the Will Ferrell Super Bowl ad too. That's hilarious.
That was it really was that thing where like, this is it. This thing is totally in chorus.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Perfect. Why don't we go on to how you as a business owner obviously come in to certain challenges as a business owner. And I think the pandemic probably was a massive challenge for everyone. It sounds like for the most part, your business is being out in the world or in the studio. How did that must have been a massive effect for you guys.
Yeah.
How did you face that challenge and overcome it? Or of course there's PPP loans too, I think. So
yeah, I mean, I can't, I was going to say, I cannot take full credit for innovation in terms of us surviving all that.
Right.
I am very grateful for the government for helping out for a big chunk of that, truly. But we did do some things which were of our own accord, and some of them were just like market driven. And that was that at the time, you still had people that had to get messaging out. They still had budget. And so they were like, we need to use this. Everyone's at home. Video's the way to go if we can do it. So we pivoted pretty quickly to doing remote video capture, and so that saved our bacon because we figured out a way to, and this was totally by trial and error. We basically figured out pretty quickly how to kind of categorize remote video production into sort of like 3 or 4 categories, which was, at the very basic level, we can use a Zoom Pro account and we can do shoots remotely that way. We figured out a second way, which was to hire local crews, even though we couldn't fly out and be there necessarily for that stuff, but we could find people that was safe and figured out safe distance protocols, not entirely on our own. The industry also was very like innovative in that respect to figure that out, to figure out what was the right protocol to keep people distance, to be able to do that. And so I'm blanking on what the third one was, but what we ended up doing, and we still get requests for this too, is we also just built out these little remote kits. That at that time, no one was like building out specific kits. We were hacking it together. We figured out that if we took an iPad mini and had HD capabilities on the back camera, we could send out a mic and a kit, a basic lighting setup, and spend the time and get whomever it was set up to do some certain stuff. Didn't allow for a lot of creativity, but it still worked for a lot of purposes and it paid the bills. So that was like the big thing that we did that we could do innovatively. The other thing we did was this was already starting to happen, but in terms of the proliferation of stock footage, that was happening in like 2018 to 2019. But the other part of that was, okay, let's really get to know the stock footage libraries that are out there now. Get really keen on what's available to us, because then we could talk to clients about, no, we cannot go shoot people at a concert, but we have found these clips, these great clips of these various libraries. We can put together an ad that looks very good and it makes people feel engaged, like they're at a concert kind of thing. So those were the 2 big things we did that helped us stay afloat.
Nice.
knowing
And
that
so
we couldn't be in person.
any of that innovation that still lives on today, like you wouldn't have had this without the pandemic, or did that all kind of go away once it went
No,
over?
no, I think occasionally we still get probably every quarter we're doing at least one remote video
Really? Yeah.
recording.
Well,
Yeah,
like we're doing now. Yeah.
like we're doing now, totally. And like, so we still do those. We still send out the kit occasionally.
Yeah.
But the stock footage stuff has only
That was a
gotten
game
better.
changer. Yeah.
That's only
Yeah.
gotten better. So as much as people are sick of seeing ads with just like total wall-to-wall stock footage and stuff, we still do those
Yeah. I
here and
bet
there
that
too. So
business is actually blown up because now
right,
people can go out and just shoot, and add to the stockpile of stock
totally.
footage. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Each one of those things is an asset. It's
yeah. I did. I don't know how
interesting
tangible.
business.
Yeah, I know. I don't. We had thought about at one point we should do that. We've got all this B-roll we've shot of all this stuff
Yeah.
that we own. And then we kind of I was like, I don't want to be in the stock footage
Right.
business. But this is a bit tangential, but I was on a call today with the stock footage library that what they've done is they're basically taking models. I mean, human beings, not AI, taking human beings. And if you go to stock footage library now and you search for construction worker, you'll get this guy or that gal, or this looks like Arizona and this looks like whatever, Ukraine or whatever.
Right.
It's all kinds of varied stuff. What they're doing is they're taking a model. So they take Ryan and they put you in a lab coat and you're a tech, and they shoot a full set of scenes of that. Then they make you look like a student, and now you're in college. So you can kind of, if you want to, you can almost like find the character based on their stock footage library and sort of write your script based on scenes, almost a linear story that they're kind of telling with these models. And they have tons of them.
Very cool.
So that's an interesting reverse engineering on that.
Right. So before writing the screen.
Yeah. I think there's only one company that's doing that right now. So that's what we could do. We could go out.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
One of them. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Very cool. Well, what I would say, what career advice would you give to those budding filmmakers or entertainers, those future entertainers? Because, obviously you've been through a complete shift in what you're doing, but still in the business. You're a business owner now. Like, what if you could turn back time, what would you do differently that you wished you would have known? I would have skipped college. Waste of money.
You and I,
waste of money.
I remember you and I talking about that when we were 22.
I know,
fresh out of college. Like, how the hell did we
this
do
was
that?
a waste of money. We're making like $15 an hour.
Yeah. I'd say, well, I don't know. Okay, two different questions. One, what would I do differently? I would do, and you were always good at this, is I would be more, when you're in the ground floor, do as much as you can. Even though you may be hired to do this, make sure you're doing these other things. So you might be, I don't know, you might be a technical director, you might be doing roto or whatever it is at that base level. But it doesn't hurt to learn how to write. And I don't mean code. It doesn't hurt to learn about story, even if you're not going to write. It doesn't hurt to learn about story. Just particularly, I'm just speaking for this business, right? Like, try to understand all of the sort of spectrum of what's going on and what's going into a production. You may never be a screenwriter, but it's really good to know 3-act structure. It's really good to know those things, even, like I said, even if you're just doing roto. That would be my advice. The other thing I would say, and this is a bit antithetical to what we just said, but that is like, the thing about college, or if you're just in film school, not even in college, is that the camaraderie and the connectivity that you make with the people that you're working with is really invaluable. I mean, you and I would not be talking right now like this if we didn't go to film school together. And I wouldn't have never worked at Rhythm and Hughes if I didn't know you as a result of that. Right. And then that sort of connection and nepotism continues on, right? Like,
absolutely.
So that,
I got my last job from an artist that I was his manager years ago. He recommended me. So it's just every single person. That's really good advice, because I think a lot of times too, when you're young, you also can, how do I say this? maybe say things or maybe even make enemies to some people, and you don't realize, hey, that person could be your boss someday, or that person could,
Yeah.
because I've seen that too. And then, that whole "you'll never work in this town again," that's where that comes from.
Totally does. That's
and,
it in Hollywood. Yeah.
and how it ties in with your earlier statement of just kind of getting out there and learning more and more, even if it's outside of what your current purview is. Because
Yeah.
I think that's another thing that can be lost in sort of this entitlement view. I don't want to say generation, but there is an entitlement that's kind of risen up. And when you really work hard, that's where people take notice. It's not like you have to work hard, but when you do, and it's seen, that helps you move up too. But yeah, those two tied together, the networking and not even networking, it's just, being a good colleague and
Yeah.
where people want to
Yeah.
work with you again. And that's invaluable. So that's,
It is.
really, really good advice.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
good advice. Well, with that said, we always end it on, what is your favorite movie of all time?
Dude, I think I watched one.
It's hard to boil it down.
Oh, my kids ask this all the time, and I'm like, I don't know. It's impossible. I can.
Mine always shifts. Any given moment. Yeah. Of course, Star Wars for me is,
Yeah.
all time. That's what got me in the movies. But
yeah, I don't know. My favorite genre, I really come to realize, is film noir. It's my favorite genre. So it's usually a movie in that vein, which could even like Big Lebowski is not my favorite movie, but I do love that movie.
That's my favorite comedy of all time. If I was to drill it
Is
down to genre, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's such a great film.
It is.
In fact, I think, were we at Sundance together when that came out? Were you at that Sundance? 'Cause we went to Sundance twice. I can't remember if you were at that one or.
I don't remember that coming out that year, but it could have. And
Yeah.
I just wasn't aware of it. But
Yeah.
do you remember being at Sundance and it came and it was there?
I remember I didn't go to that movie at Sundance, but I remember when others had gone to it, and it was this big, huge deal. Maybe the year we went, it was Blair Witch, because everybody was talking about Blair Witch also.
It wasn't. You know what? I think Lebowski came out before you and I were at Sundance together.
Was it? I remember everybody talking about it. Yeah.
Probably because that was your senior year of college that we were there.
Yeah.
I think it was. And I think Lebowski came out before that, but
right. Yeah, it must have been before. But yeah, I remember the buzz back then, and then when I actually saw it, I'm like, okay, now I get it. It's so good.
It is so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know what my favorite movie is.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, we just named some good ones.
We did.
Lebowski and Star Wars.
Pulp Fiction was the one. I saw Pulp Fiction in the movie theater, and I stood up and went like, I'm going to film school. Like that.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't know what I was going to do, and I was just like, I loved movies and stuff, but I just was like,
that just changed your mind. Oh, that's cool.
And then cut to us working on Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. Totally.
Like, this isn't what I had in mind exactly.
Furry animals is what I do. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, on that note, it's always great talking to you, man. I love catching up with you. And great nuggets of wisdom here. And thank you so much for doing this. And I'm going to post your banner up here one more time if you want to find Ben and his company and his wife Trista. They're there because we all went to college together. So that's their company. Check them out. Really cool stuff on there. Looks like you get to meet a lot of interesting people, including big famous sports figures that are in Denver. That looks cool.
Yeah.
And then here is my website if you want to come find what I'm all about. It's money-act.com, where we talk about movies and money. All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.